Our sermon text comes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verses 12 through 22. Now, when Jesus heard that John was arrested, he went to Galilee. He left Nazareth and settled in Capernaum, which lies alongside the sea in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. This fulfilled what the prophet Isaiah said. The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali alongside the sea across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who lived in the dark have seen a great light, and a light has come upon those who lived in the region and in the shadow of death. From that time, Jesus began to announce, "Change your hearts and lives. Here comes the kingdom of heaven." As Jesus walked alongside the Galilee Sea, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, throwing fishing nets into the sea because they were fishermen. "Come, follow me," he said, "and I'll show you how to fish for people." Right away, they left their nets and followed him. Continuing on, he saw another set of brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with Zebedee, their father, repairing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. This is one of those passages that we could get bogged down in the nerdy details that pastors like to talk about. But I'm not going to subject you to that this morning. As fun as it would be, and everyone would have fun, I'm not going to do that. But there is some cultural context here that's important. Their world was very different than ours. As a man, you grew up and you did the thing your father did. There weren't other options. It wasn't like, let's find your passion, and then you can follow that passion in life, and you can do whatever your heart is set on. That world didn't exist until very, very, very recently. If your father was a fisherman, you were a fisherman. That was your only option. There was nothing else. You also did not disobey your father, right? There's a whole commandment about that. Honor your father and mother. So, to leave your father in the boat, repairing nets, and to walk off with a stranger is about the worst thing as a child you could do to your parent in that context. So we need to understand the gravity of what is happening here, because it seems so benign to us reading it. Oh, here's this person. Jesus comes along, says, "Follow me," and they go, "Of course," and they follow, and they leave. And the dad just goes, "Well, no." Something monumentous happened for them in what they were doing with their lives. So it got me thinking, why? Why did they abandon everything they had known and everything they had been taught, defy everything they had been taught to respect, and follow Jesus? This is early on. Nobody really knew much about Jesus. There were probably some stories that were circulating. Maybe the water into wine story had found its way around. But this is the calling of the disciples. This is early on. He doesn't have a giant crowd traveling with him. He's just a guy alone walking on a beach. What would compel them to just drop what they're doing and follow? What's recorded here isn't some grand sales pitch. He doesn't sit them down and go, "I'm going to explain to you why this would be beneficial to you. I'm going to walk you through a point-by-point plan as to why this will be great for your life." He doesn't convince them of anything. He makes an offer. "Come, follow me." And they do it. Why? Why did they do it? What did they see in Jesus that would cause them to abandon everything and follow? This is what I've been pondering all week. I don't have a hard answer for you because it's all just what's possible. But what I tend to think happened is they encountered this person that was unlike any person they had ever encountered. And they saw in his face something that they had never experienced before or seen before, that drew them so completely to himself that it was an irresistible offer. They could not say no. They had to see what this person was all about. They had to see where they were going. They wanted to be a part of whatever it was that was coming next. Now, maybe growing up as responsible Jewish men who had expectations, who had heard John talking about this Messiah, this Christ that had come. Now, perhaps the pull for them initially was, oh, this is the one that's been promised. This is the one that's going to finally come in and finally restore our land to us. And maybe that was enough initially to get them to follow. They wanted to be a part of that process. They wanted to be a part of the kingdom being reclaimed, the Romans being kicked out. So maybe that was part of it. It's possible. But others had come before Jesus. Jesus wasn't the first one that claimed the title of Messiah or was called the Anointed One or the Christ to come and to promise to raise up an army and to kick out the oppressors. Others had come before him, most famously recorded in Maccabees, in the part of the Bible that we have excluded, but others include, when they revolted against the Romans. Others had come before. This wasn't new. So I don't think that's just it. What I think it was when they looked in the face of Jesus, they experienced the presence of God in the most concrete, real way that they had ever experienced. When he started talking about the kingdom of heaven, the word that Matthew uses for the kingdom of God, what they understood without Jesus saying anything was, come and follow me as we make everything right that's wrong, as we recreate what was supposed to be. Prior to sin, prior to death entering creation, let us come and recreate as God intended, to make right the wrongs of creation, to heal what is broken. Come and follow me as we embark on ushering in the kingdom. And in that invitation, they understood that life wasn't meant to be as they were experiencing it. Being a fisherman was hard work. Every day you'd be out, casting your nets at the mercy of the elements. You'd bring in your haul, you'd take it to the market, but it had to happen every day to survive. You weren't growing an empire, you weren't buying more boats, you had a small boat, you went out every day and you fished. Some days you brought stuff back, some days you didn't. That was your life, and it was hard. And for most of the people, life was hard. And they all lived under oppression. Their whole lives have been under oppression. It was made hard by others. It wasn't just naturally hard, because it's hard to survive in this world. It was made to be hard by those in power. And in the face of Jesus, they saw somebody who said, it's not supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be those in power using their power to inflict this on you. that is not what it means to be powerful. And for the next 3.5 years, he showed them what it meant to be powerful. I often wonder about Zebedee, left in the boat repairing the nets, by himself. Was he angry at his kids the rest of his life? Did he ever come to a point where he understood why they did what they did? These are questions we don't have answers for, but they're things I wish, like, a little, like, few sentences after, like, years later, Zebedee came to understand what Andrew and Simon did, what John and, yeah. So here's how I've been thinking of this week. It was another week of turmoil in Minneapolis and St. Paul. More people died. So how does the invitation to us to follow, how is that meant to be received and lived into? Because the invitation has remained the same through millennia. Come, follow me. That gets answered in many different ways, depending on who you talk to. But in light of everything going on, and in light of me talking to my clergy friends around the country, several of whom came to Minneapolis for Friday, in reading statements issued by bishops in other denominations about clergy's role in the world, the bishop in the Diocese of New Hampshire, maybe you read, has encouraged the clergy to have their affairs in order. Make sure their wills are done. Because those who study history understand that there are times where the call to follow is to stand between power and the weakest of the people. But why do it? Why sacrifice comfort? Just keep our heads down. It'll blow over. Why sacrifice what we have to the benefit of other people we don't know? Because that's what it means to be a disciple. That is what it has always meant to be a disciple. Look at the lives of the original disciples. They were all lived out for the benefit of others, and all but one paid with their lives. The one who didn't got exiled and lived on an island. I like history, and I like church history, and I've studied a lot of church history, not just the stuff I had to in seminary, but on my own. And the fact is, unfortunately, the church is often on the wrong side of history. Often. It's not that we got it wrong once or twice, because we've often been on the wrong side of each historical time that calls for the church to stand up for what is right. So we're in another one of those periods of time. The call to follow Jesus is never one to be taken lightly. It is never one that comes with it blessings and comfort, contrary to what some say. God doesn't want you to be rich and wealthy and successful and happy. In fact, Jesus didn't care much about the physical safety of those who followed him. It doesn't come up, except in a couple of kind of things in passing. He doesn't seem all that concerned. Because their physical safety is not what matters. The call of the church is to risk, to risk of ourselves, sometimes our livelihoods, sometimes all that we have, so that we can do the work of ushering in the kingdom of healing and wholeness coming to creation, of a society that isn't based upon those who have power using it to crush those who don't. Where power is about setting aside self and serving others. Believing that the kingdom coming is about the flourishing of all humanity. That it's not a pie to be cut up, that in order for somebody to get some, they got to take some of yours. But that no, creation was created in a way that humanity could flourish. That there's plenty. Scarcity is not a thing. It's invented. Oddly enough, it's invented by those who seem to be hoarding everything. As my clergy friends and I talk and lament and rage to each other, the thing we wonder most is 50 years from now, when we look back, or when historians look back, will the church have been on the right side of history or the wrong side of history? Will we be again lamenting, as we are now, hundreds of years later, the boarding schools for Native Americans and the role the church played in that? Will we be lamenting Tuesday with International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the role of the German church being the mouthpiece for the government, telling the people to comply and obey so they keep their freedom? How will we look back on this? The invitation to come and follow is about relationship, about being in relationship with the creator of the heavens and the earth, and about bringing others into that relationship. A relationship that's based on equity and inclusion, justice for all people, peace, love, compassion, kindness, mercy, forgiveness, where cruelty has no place. Where when you look at another person, you see the face of God because you can't see them any other way. But stepping between the powerful and the weak has consequences. It always does. It's always uncomfortable and always costly. So this is for us to decide where we are, what our role is, and how we serve faithfully. And I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you what the right answer for you is. I'm not one of those people that says, we all have to abandon everything and we all have to do this one thing, because that's not how it works either. We all have different callings to meet the needs of the moment. However, I can tell you one thing that I'm confident about. It will cost us dearly. In whatever way we're called to the work of the church in this moment, it will cost us dearly. But not cost us dearly in terms of our spiritual lives. It will actually be the opposite. It will be edifying to our spirits. But from a worldly perspective, it may cost us dearly. Maybe consequences. And all the more reason to answer that call to come and to follow. So this is something I think about a lot. I'm sure you think about it in some way or shape, or form. So I want to start talking about what that looks like. Come and talk. Let's talk it through. I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to hear the things you're seeing. I want to know how it's impacting your spirit. What are the things you think God's calling you to do? Because this is what it means to be a community within the church doing the work of the church. This is my role as a pastor, to shepherd, to guide people, to offer spiritual counsel. So I'm hoping this is the start of conversations, of wrestling with these things, of understanding that we're not in it alone. Because far too often we tell ourselves the myth that we're in it alone, that we're all by ourselves, that we don't have anyone in this work. The church has only ever been called to do the work together, never as individuals, never alone. So let's answer the call faithfully. Trust that God is there with us, that God is guiding us and leading us, that even though we don't know where the path ends, we know where the next step is, and we live into that step. The kids always have great answers. We live into it with love, with bravery, with prayer. Amen.